Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to our 10 a.m. virtual education program. My name is Rachel, Education Specialist at the Topeka Zoo, and today we are going to focus on our final second grade lesson plan. But before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors, Topeka Collegiate and the Kokari Foundation, for graciously sponsoring these programs. So for second grade thus far, we have been talking about ecosystems and the differing ecosystems around the world and how animals are adapted to them. Well, for our final second grade lesson today, we are going to switch from ecosystems to another super important topic. Today we are going to be talking about pollination and seed dispersal. Now, both of these topics alone we could teach a 30-minute class on, but today we're going to do a quick introduction to both and then meet an animal who is a very important animal over in Africa for seed dispersal. So let's get started by first talking about pollination. So what pollination is it is where an animal moves pollen from one type of plant to the next. And there are over 200,000 different types of pollinators in the world. So pollen is a type of fine dust-like materials that are on differing types of plants, both flowering plants like sunflowers as well as crops that we like to eat. So on this flower here, if you guys look really closely, I'm going to blow and you might actually be able to see some pollen on this flower. Does that pick it up on the camera? It does. Okay, let's do it again. So pollen is a dust-like material that is on differing types of crops and plants. Now what happens is animals who like to land on our crops and land on our plants, like bees, they are pollinators because they might land on this flower to drink the nectar, the sugar water inside. But when they land on that flower to drink the nectar, that pollen, that dust gets all over their body. And what happens is they get that dust all over their body, their legs, and they move from one flower with the pollen to another flower with the pollen. In that process, from moving that pollen from one flower to the next, that is what we call pollination. And moving that pollen, that dust, from one to the next is what allows new plants to be created. So a pollinator is simply any animal that moves pollen from one plant to the next. And this is very, very important because pollination provides us 75% of all of the world's flowers. And it provides us 35% of all of the crops that we eat, which means 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat is pollinated by an animal. Now, when people think of pollinators, they usually think of animals like bees, and this is a really big type of pollinator. There are over 3,500 bee species in the world who are pollinators, so we absolutely need our bees. But there's other types of pollinators as well. Butterflies, like the monarch butterfly, is an important pollinator. So our animals, I've got pollen on my graphic. So are animals like bats. Bats sometimes get a bad reputation, but many bats eat bugs, and several other types of bats actually eat fruits and different types of plants. And so here is an image of a bat who is eating the fruit from a cactus. But in the process, he is pollinating that cactus. He is moving the pollen from one cactus to another. So bats are super important pollinators. Here's a really big one. This is a type of fly. It is called the midge fly. Now, most people don't like flies. However, there is a super important reason why we should love the midge fly. It pollinates chocolate, the cacao plant, right? It pollinates that plant, and that plant is eventually processed and made into the delicious chocolate that we love. If we didn't have the midge fly, we wouldn't have chocolate. So we really must protect the midge fly, right? Because that allows us to have the cacao that turns into chocolate that we love to eat. Now, birds are super important pollinators as well. Here's a picture of a ground finch over in the Galapagos, which is part of Ecuador down south of us, and it is pollinating a cactus, just like the bat was earlier. Here's another example. This is a black and white ruffed lemur, and they are considered one of the largest pollinators in the world. So it's any animal that gets the pollen on them and moves it from one plant to the next. Humans, we can even be pollinators. If we walk through a field of flowers and we get that pollen on our body and we move it from one flower to the next accidentally, that is still considered pollination. So as I said, over 200,000 different species of pollinators in the world. And if we didn't have these animals pollinating, helping to create our plants and our flowers, like our crops as well, we would not have much of the foods we like to eat. Here are just a few examples of foods that we eat that get pollinated by insects, by bugs. Tomatoes, peaches, blueberries, coconuts, apples, avocados, squash and gourds, and for many of us adults, this is a super important one, coffee beans, right? So all of these foods and drink for the coffee, they are around because we have our pollinators. So it is very important that we protect our pollinators, because without them, we don't have many of our flowering plants, which are important for other animals to eat, and we don't have many of our own crops that we enjoy eating as humans as well. Now, my friends at the Kansas Children's Discovery Center are actually doing a live today, right now. They have a gentleman from the city of Topeka, Aaron Grams, who is a friend of mine. He's excellent. He knows all about pollination, water, and native habitat. He is actually going to be showing you guys how to do a do-it-yourself pollinator craft. So after we're done here today, please head over to the Kansas Children's Discovery Center Facebook page for a craft relating to pollinators and how we can help them. Now, aside from pollination, from moving that dust-like material from one flower to the next, seed dispersal is another excellent way that our plants and our crops are able to grow. So seed dispersal is different from pollination because we don't have animals moving the pollen from one plant to the next. They are moving the actual seed itself from one area to the next. Now, they oftentimes do this by eating the seed and carrying it to another location, and then that seed falls into the dirt and a plant grows from it. And sometimes those seeds actually get moved via the animal's poop. I know that sounds kind of gross, and poop is always a silly word, but poop is really important because it helps move seeds. So let's look at a few examples of seed dispersal, which just means dispersing, spreading seeds from one place to the next. So our first example is actually a type of ant. This is a type of plant where the ants actually eat the orange part of this seed. And what happens is they are moving that seed from one location to the next. So even our little guys, like the ants, they can help disperse the seeds. Another example of one you might not think about is actually different types of fish. During yearly floods, fish actually eat many of the fruits and the plants that are under the water, and they move it from one location to the next. So even underwater, fish can disperse seeds. They can move it from one place to another. Here's one that you might be familiar with if you have a dog. I know I am familiar with this one. Burrs. If you've ever been in a wooded area, you've gotten burrs stuck to you, or maybe you have a dog that likes to run through fields. Burrs, like the one that's attached to this dog's fur, that is a type of seed, and they hook on specifically because they want animals to move them from one location to the next, because as soon as they fall off the dog, maybe a field away from where the dog got them stuck, then they are able to grow in the dirt and plant a new plant. Here's another one. This is the scat, the poop of a big animal. It happens to be the one we talked about yesterday. This is bear poop. Bears are omnivores and they love eating different types of fruits and veggies, especially berries. So if you look, you can actually see a bunch of seeds in the poop of that bear. Now, it's not just animals that pollinate and spread seeds. Oftentimes, things like wind can help pollinate and spread seeds as well. Plants like dandelions, which we like to pick and blow all the seeds off of, that is pollinated and seed dispersed through wind. So animals play a very big role in pollination and seed dispersal, but so can other elements like the wind. So, if you are in second grade, I have a worksheet for you all. The first side is a maze, and you're hoping to get the bee through the maze to the flower. It says on the bottom, honeybees pollinate more than 100 differing crop species. That's crazy. That's just one type of bee. Now on the back, this wants you to connect the animal or the element, like the wind, to the seed they help disperse. So you simply will draw a line from the animal or the wind to the type of seed or plant that they help to disperse or pollinate. As always, take a picture and put it in the comments. And you can find this worksheet in the link on the video right here, lesson 6. So my friends, pollination is a very important process in the animal kingdom. Not only is it helpful for new plants to grow, but it provides us as humans money. Think about it. We don't have to really pay to have bees and butterflies around, but they help produce our crops that we eat. Scientists estimate that little animals like pollinators provide us between $200 and $500 billion worth of services, worth of food and other types of plants in the United States each year. Up to $500 billion. So not only do our ecosystems, like the one we've learned about in all of our other classes, rely on our pollinators and our seed dispersals, but so do we as humans. It is no secret that many of our pollinators, like bees and butterflies, are declining. They're not doing very well. People are spraying chemicals like herbicides and pesticides in their garden, and it's affecting these animals. When they drink from the nectar from a flower that has chemicals on it, it kills these animals. So their numbers are going down, which seems counterintuitive. You would think we would want to do everything we can to help protect our pollinators because they give us 1 in every 3 bites of food and billions of dollars each year in our country alone. So please do go to the Kansas Children's Discovery School Facebook or Discovery Center Facebook page. They're going to show you how to make a craft that helps our pollinators. So my friends, I want to move my stuff over because the animal we are going to meet today is kind of a bigger one. And he is an animal that is very important in dispersing seeds over in Africa, where they are native to. Now this is an animal who we rescued at the Topeka Zoo several years ago. So you'll notice that he looks a little bit messed up, and I will explain why. So we are going to meet a tortoise. This is what we call a leopard tortoise. And this one's name is Speedy. Alrighty. So as you guys can see, one of the first things you might notice about Speedy is that his shell is kind of caved inward. This is what we call pyramiding. And what happens is Speedy actually used to be somebody's pet. And unfortunately, they didn't take good care of Speedy when he was younger, when he was a baby and a juvenile. And as a result of him not getting enough food and the food that he needed to survive, his shell actually became deformed and it did not grow to be the beautiful dome-like shell that it is supposed to be. Now, thankfully, we rescued him, and now he is getting all of the right foods and nutrition that he needs, but his shell is never going to grow like it was supposed to. So he is about 20 years old. We've had him for quite a long time, but unfortunately, we cannot undo the damage that was done. But I can assure you that it doesn't bug him now. He is getting all of the right foods, and he is a big, happy tortoise. So he is a leopard tortoise, and he gets his name because of the spots on his shell. It kind of looks like a leopard, which is another big animal, a big cat, that also lives over in Africa, where the leopard tortoises are found. Now, these guys like to live in grassland and drier areas over in Africa, and they are herbivores, which means he eats a lot of different types of plants, grasses and bushes and all sorts of differing types. So he is very important in dispersing the seeds over in Africa. This tortoise, he will eat a bunch of vegetables, a bunch of grasses and plants, and he will walk a little bit, and then he will poop. Now, tortoises and animals that eat a lot of vegetables and plants, they poop a lot. And he actually pooped in his container. So I was waiting for him to do that. But that's good, because by pooping, he is moving seeds from one place to the next. So he is responsible for helping new plants to be planted in the ground via those seeds, and then they'll sprout up and they provide food and habitat for many of the other animals over in Africa. So these guys are super important for helping seeds to grow and form new plants. Now, leopard tortoises, he is a small version. He is stunted because of the malnutrition that he had when he was younger. However, this is the 4th largest tortoise species in the world. Tortoises live on land, turtles live in the water. And if he were healthier and bigger, they can get up to 2 feet tall and weigh up to 40 pounds. However, this guy, like I said, he's not going to grow much bigger, and he only weighs maybe 10 pounds. So he's not going to get as big as some of the leopard tortoises are able to get. Now, as a tortoise, he cannot leave his shell. That shell is attached to his backbone, and it grows with him. And they also don't have any teeth. So he's got a beak on the front of his mouth that is broad and flat, kind of like our molars, and that allows him to chomp on all of those plants that he is eating. But like I said, this is the 4th largest tortoise species in the world. The largest tortoise is the Galapagos tortoise, then the Aldabra, the sulcata, and then the leopard tortoises. And of course, sea turtles in the water can get a lot bigger than these guys as well. So he is a good story in pet care. If you guys are going to get a pet, please make sure you can commit to it for its entire lifetime, and that you're able to provide it the right kind of food and the right amount of it. Leopard tortoises can live 80 to 100 years. So yes, they can be a fun pet. They're easy to take care of, easy to clean up from, but they might outlive a human. So it's always important to know who's going to take care of it if it outlives you. So like I said, he's only about 20 years old now, so he will still, he still has 60 to 80 years to live, which is amazing. So do any of my friends at home have any questions relating to pollination, seed dispersal, leopard tortoises, or anything that we've covered today?
I have a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. Today. Excellent. Perfect.
All right. Ann Paquette wants to know what your favorite pollinator is.
Monarch butterflies. So we do classes in September on monarch butterflies where we actually catch, tag, and release them. And I absolutely love those classes. It's where the public can join us and actually do real life conservation work with us. So I have a special place in my heart for monarch butterflies, although I love bees too. Every time I see a bee, I get really excited.
How does pollen stick to bats?
So it's a dust. So it's kind of like if you put your hand in flour and it kind of just sticks to it, that's what it is. So it's got that consistency where it's not like sticky, but there's a lot of it, and so it sticks really easily to them.
Hello to Mrs. Myers, 2nd grade class.
Oh, hello, Mrs. You guys are always on. Thank you guys for watching every time. We appreciate it.
How can we help pollinators at home?
Oh, lovely question. So, Several things. One, please do not spray any chemicals in your garden, okay? Don't spray things to kill the weeds. Don't spray chemicals to kill the bad bugs, because while it might kill the weeds and it might kill the bad bugs, bees and butterflies and birds don't know which flowers have the chemicals on them. So when they come to drink the nectar from a flower and it's got those chemicals on it, they drink up the poison and it kills them. And then any animal that swoops in to eat that dead bee or butterfly, the poison goes to them as well. So never spray chemicals in your garden. Another thing you guys can do is make a home for pollinators. So there are bee houses that you can make, and I think that's what the Kansas Children Discovery Center is making on their Facebook page today. We also have some at the Topeka Zoo you can purchase. Not every bee lives in a hive. There are many solitary bees, and they need homes as well. There's also insect motels that you can buy online. I have one in my backyard, and then it's just providing a home for many of the pollinators. And you can put out things like bird feeders or water baths so that many of the pollinators have something to drink. If you're setting it out specifically for the little guys, like the monarch butterflies or the bees, have some rocks in it so they can stand on the rock and then drink the water and they don't drown. We could teach a whole class on how to help pollinators. That's a great question.
Does the shape of his shell impact how he's living?
Great question. So no, it doesn't. It doesn't hurt him. It doesn't affect him anymore. It's just something that when he was younger, because he didn't get the right types of food that he needed, he did not grow as big as he should have. But thankfully, it doesn't hurt him anymore. He is happy and healthy now. It's just going to look like that the rest of his life.
Can he walk?
Yep, he sure can. So right now he's not, just because he's curious and trying to figure out what's around him. But he can walk. He's got all 4 of his legs and this shell, and he can walk just fine.
Bianca and Cami want to know, how can you tell if it's a male or a female?
Great question. So on these guys, there's 2 ways to tell. One, the males have longer, bigger tails than the females, so we know it's a boy if the tail is really big. And 2, you actually have to look at the underside of their shell. The bottom part of the shell is what we call the plastron. On boy tortoises, the plastron is curved inward. On girl tortoises, the plastron is flat. So if it's got a curved shell on the bottom, it's a boy. If it's completely flat, it's a girl. And you can also look at their tail. Great question.
Linus wants to know, can he swim?
Excellent question, Linus. They actually can swim. Now, living over in Africa, they're not really going to find huge bodies of water very often, but they can hold their breath for up to 10 minutes. And they have the ability, it's not like they're going to swim well, but they can be under the water to cool off.
What is his enrichment?
So at the Topeka Zoo, he gets a variety of fruits and vegetables because he is a herbivore. So they might just mix it up and give him some differing types. He also loves soaking in a tub. In fact, when I went to get him out of his enclosure today, he was in a big old bathtub soaking up the water. And so just making sure that they're staying hydrated is nice. And then moving around parts of their enclosure to have differing logs, differing things to burrow under. In the warm months, they actually go outside in front of the giraffe exhibit. So there's all sorts of different enrichment for these guys.
What does he eat at the zoo?
Lots of fruits and vegetables. So things like carrots and apples and broccoli and greens, all sorts of restaurant quality fruits and vegetables, things you'd find in the store. He eats all of those.
What does he like to do each day?
Eat. That is one of the favorite things of tortoises, is eating. And he also really likes his bath times as well. So when I go put him up, I'll put him back in his tub and he can continue soaking.
Does he play with anything?
No, so these guys are solitary in the wild, so they're not going to be living with other groups of tortoises, and they don't really respond to toys like some of the mammals might. His favorite thing to do is simply to eat, or maybe just to kind of go under differing logs and structures in his exhibit.
What's his name?
His name is Speedy, which is funny because tortoises are not fast. The other one that we have is Sheldon, so playing off of the shell.
That's all. I have.
Okay. Well, friends, if we don't have any final questions, I want to thank you, second graders, for watching. Do make sure to join us next Wednesday and Thursday. We have 2 really fun surprise classes that are for everybody. And you're welcome to join us for the other grades as well. But it's been a really nice time talking about second grade curriculum. And if we don't have any final questions, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.